You can't get done.
That's right.
Good evening. The meeting of the Washington County Quorum Court Jails and Law Enforcement / Courts Committee will come to order. My name is Lance Johnson. I was asked to chair this meeting until we elect a chair, which we'll do shortly. First, I'd like to introduce the members of the committee. They're myself, Yanez, Judith, Patrick Deakins, Sam Duncan, Shawndra Washington, Willie Leming, and Harbison. All right, the floor is open for nominations for chair of the committee. Justice Deakins.
It's my honor. I would like to nominate J.P. Lance Johnson to be chairman of this committee. I think he has the knowledge, the background, and the temperament for the very challenge before us.
Okay. There's been one nomination. Is there a second?
I make a motion that we accept you by acclamation.
There's been a motion to accept that nomination by acclamation. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same sign. The motion carries. Is there a nomination for vice chair? Justice Harbison.
I nominate Shawndra Washington.
Okay. There's a nomination for Shawndra Washington for vice chairs. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. Are there other nominations? Justice Deakins.
I would like to nominate Justice Willie Leming.
Justice Leming has been nominated. Is there a second? Are there any other nominations? Okay, we will vote. How do we do it? Those voting for Shawndra Washington, raise your hand, please. Let me do it again. Those voting for Willie Leming, raise their hand, please. My vote's for Willie Leming. Thank you. Right, could we have a motion to adopt the agenda?
Move that we adopt the agenda.
Did,
I second.
who made the motion?
Harbison.
Okay. Okay, we got a motion and a second. I'm gonna make a comment. I watched the last Monday's committee meeting on YouTube, and if people don't turn their microphones on, the people on YouTube don't have a clue who's saying what. Okay, so we got a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, item 5, the review of the responsibilities of the Jails Law Enforcement Courts Committee. The responsibilities of the Jails Law Enforcement Courts Committees are to discuss, to plan all phases of the current system with a focus towards the future. This would take into account operating philosophy, financing of current and future needs. And I know all of you have watched what's going on recently, and we have a challenge in front of us. So we need to get after that. Item number 6, juvenile detention. Do we have a monthly statistics report?
No. Mr. Chair, our director of the juvenile, JDC director, Ms. Jeannie Mack, they were understaffed today, and they didn't have anybody to come forward, and so she is not available and didn't have anyone available to give that report. She sends her regrets and apologies and says she will update us on that at the next meeting.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Item 7, Sheriff's Office report.
report on the juvenile, it's on the screen.
It's in the packet.
It's in the packet.
It's included in the packet. She's just not here to answer questions or give it. So if you have any questions, you can email her. She'd be happy to.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. I'm Jay Cantrell. I'm the Chief Deputy at the Washington County Sheriff's Office, and I'll give you the enforcement report for the enforcement portion of our operations down there. Nothing out of the ordinary to report. Our animal calls are running about where they always do, 117 this past month. Calls for service up a little bit, but nothing that we're alarmed about. All the other numbers are within what we expect on those, so I'll be happy to answer any questions about the enforcement side. Major Denzer will be up momentarily to talk about the jail.
Are there any questions? Seeing none.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Okay, item 8, an ordinance to establish the daily fee charged to municipalities.
We need the jail report.
Oh, excuse me.
That's important. Randall Israel.
7.2, Lance.
Okay, 7.2, excuse me. Getting ahead of myself.
Good evening. My name's Randall Denzer. I'm the jail administrator. Y'all see, you have your reports there in front of you. The intakes are up a little bit. Everything else is running about the same. As you can see, had 59 on the floor today. So, like I say, things aren't changing. They're just getting a little worse. Count's down just a little bit right now. I think the high count was 682. We was up over 700, but just fluctuation. Just depends on what day of the week it is. Yes, ma'am.
How many pretrial people do we have today?
Well, it's a little better than usual. It's usually over 400, and I think it was 372.
Question. How many are we taking in to custody from Madison County?
I think we have about, usually fluctuates between about 15 and 25.
And-
I think about 22 or 23.
And what's the reasoning?
It's actually committed.
What's the reasoning for it's committed? What does that mean?
Well, I mean, they're committed, or the pretrial and committed total.
Okay.
Both, everybody they bring.
So why are we holding Madison County?
Well, we started out trying to help them out a little bit, plus it's a revenue stream.
Gotcha.
They're charged for $62 per day per person.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Item 7.3, the pretrial and total bed count.
Well, we get in a bit too big a hurry. We talked about that a little bit. That's the kind of the report that Ann wants to see is our pretrial. And our pretrial was about 200 folks. And with the increase of all the detainees now is about 400. So we're kind of matching how many pretrial do we have compared to committed. And like I say, today it was down 372, but that's what this report here shows, that our pretrials, the ones that we don't get paid for and trying to get through the system. The prosecutor's office has worked fantastic with us, trying to turn people loose. We turn loose about 200 a month right now, trying to stay at these numbers. And they're working excellent with us, but like I say, it's just the volume that we're dealing with.
And Justice Harbison, excuse me.
On your 56, you said on the floor, that's how many people we don't have beds for?
Right.
At the jail, they were having to put
Yes, have them sleep on
mats
two
on the
mattresses.
floor for them?
Yes.
Okay. Would you kind of explain the prisoner, I guess, why we end up, because different kinds of prisoners can't be housed together, and so therefore, even though we may have a total number of beds that could be used, they can't be housed with other prisoners.
Yes, our beds, the jail capacity is 710, but that's in the perfect world where you could use every bed. We're not like a prison where everybody's committed and they can sort them out however they want to. We have the pretrial and the men and the women and the misdemeanors, and now we do a classification which helps to put more in the cells. But, like your sex offenders have to be in a cell, the violent, the nonviolent, and all the different scenarios that we have. So you may have a 20-man cell that you can only put 10 in due to their classification. So like, the count's, what did I say, 670 or 680, and we're 710. So you would think, why can't you fill them up? Well, the classification, you can't put these people together. We have a duty to protect them when they're in our custodies. So that's why you see these numbers. But with that being said, 672, we have 59 on the floor. So when you get 85% of your gross number, you're full usually.
How many misdemeanors do we have in the pretrial situation?
This morning, because of the weekend, I think we had about 20.
20.
I don't know how we fell out. They all usually go to 8.1s in courts, and we'll have a few left. Probably less than 10.
Any other questions?
Yes, Your Honor. Jay, would you just let them know when you say we can't do it, let them know that the state of Arkansas requires us. Just make sure people knows why we can't do it.
Right, yeah, there's minimum standards. I guess maybe in next month's packet, I'll put in last year's standards that we have to meet. State comes and inspects everybody in the state of Arkansas, and you're held to a state standard on what you can do. Anyway, I'll put our last findings in there so you can see that. Right. Yes, when I say these things, they're either state or federally mandated, the things that we do.
Yeah, I just want it known that we're not just trying to make everybody pretty. We're just doing what the state requires us to do. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir. And I don't think I'll call you back.
Okay.
Okay, item 8, we're to consider an ordinance to establish the daily fee charged to municipalities for housing prisoners in the county jail, item 8.1. Justice Harbison.
This is a daily fee. I thought that we had a general agreement that we were going to do it by per capita. Is there another ordinance in here by per capita?
Well, we made the agreement that this ordinance was on the agenda. The per capita is not here tonight, but we need to deal with this ordinance first.
I'm the one who proposed this motion, and since having made this, we got a lot of pushback from the county officials and from the jail because it's such a complex management situation based on where the prisoner come from, how many warrants there are out for them, and who's really responsible for the prisoners. We know that the state law allows us to do this. However, because of all the complex issues, we felt that charging on a population basis would be far superior, and the people in the county enforcement seemed to agree, and the jail's people agreed. So I was bringing that motion. Matter of fact, I sent that down for help with making that motion and getting rid of this one. And I was told that the state does not allow us to go ahead and do that on a population basis. and I'd like for our attorney to go ahead and address that and help us understand what all's going on there.
Okay, before you respond, well, go ahead, Mr. Wesson.
So state law allows the quorum court to pass an ordinance that sets a daily fee to charge the inmates. And that was recently, there was a Supreme Court case, it's in the ordinance here, the Mississippi County case, where the Supreme Court ruled and kind of clarified what a municipal inmate was versus a county inmate. And so that law that is there that says that the county can charge a daily rate, it allows the quorum court to set that rate so long as it's reasonable. What has been presented and discussed, I believe, at your meeting that I wasn't present for, but I have talked to the sheriff and I have talked to J.P. Bowman, and I believe what you were looking at, or what the court was considering, was charging the cities a per capita fee, a set fee per capita, which is not something that this quorum court can do with an ordinance. That is something that has to be done with an interlocal agreement between the county and each individual city. It's doable, and there are a lot of counties that do. I spoke with an attorney in Pulaski County today, and that's exactly what they've been doing for several years now. They have been charging a per capita fee to the cities to use the jail. They are getting ready, I believe, this year to pass an ordinance to change that to the daily rate. But I explained to J.P. Bowman that an ordinance would not be necessary, and an ordinance actually wouldn't be appropriate. I think that you could possibly pass a resolution that encouraged the county judge to enter into these interlocals. You will have to approve the interlocal once they're signed. There will be an ordinance approving the interlocal with each city, but this is something first we have to do is enter into the contract with the cities, and then once we enter into the interlocal, then it will be presented to the quorum court to pass the ordinance to accept and participate in the interlocal agreement.
Justice Harbison.
I'm going to make a motion that we remove this from the agenda, 8.1, because I think the general consensus of when we met with the mayors and the police chiefs, that we would go to a per capita charge. And I think that's a general agreement. So I'm going to make a motion that we remove this from the agenda.
I don't think that motion's appropriate. The chair will entertain a motion to postpone the ordinance indefinitely. That kills it. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in,
I don't know if this is really on the motion or not, but I had mentioned in, I think in the November meeting, the possibility of imposing a daily fee, but having it capped based on per capita. And I didn't know if that was something that could work, because it would still be a daily fee, which is what by law we're permitted to impose. But because of the city's reluctance to, with the unknown limit, would it be possible to cap it?
Yeah.
Do we know?
Oh, I think anything's possible. I don't think that's germane to the motion on the floor,
Okay.
though. Let's vote on the motion if everybody's ready for the question. The question is to postpone indefinitely item 8. Those in favor, say aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Motion carries. Okay, item number 9. Let me back up. We need to have public comment on that? What do we need public comment on? Just at the end?
Passing on an ordinance on with the do pass or do fail recommendation, so yeah, you don't need public comment on that motion.
Okay, you tell me when we need public comment. Okay, item number 9, an ordinance providing for the levy of a 1/4 of 1% sales and use tax within Washington County, Arkansas, and prescribing other matters pertaining thereto. Item 9.1. Justice Deakins.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion that we postpone 9.1 indefinitely.
Okay, there's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to postpone item 9.1 indefinitely. Discussion. Justice Harbison.
We've got an overcrowded jail, and it's I don't like this any better than anybody else on this court, but I think it's, as a citizen and as a quorum court member, we have to do those things that may not be popular. The citizens of Washington County will determine in the end if they want to support a quarter, is this, yeah. A half a sales, I may be jumping the gun here. Just a minute.
Are there any other comments? Justice Deakins.
Mr. Chairman, in making that motion, I think we all understand the critical nature of our jail capacity. I think we understand the magnitude of that, but also understand that this is a big change for Washington County, and asking our citizens to pay this tax and put it to them on a ballot. I feel like my job as a justice is to vet out every possibility there before we go and place something on the backs of the taxpayers. And I don't feel ready, I don't feel informed enough to make that decision this evening, and that's why I made my motion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other, Justice Harbison?
All right, this is the fourth of assent to, if the pod is approved, it's the fourth of assent to run the jail. And this will be left up to the citizens of Washington County. So I think that we need, and I realize everybody on this committee is new except for me. And I realize that this is a big decision. We can put it on the agenda for the full quorum court, but I think to be responsible to the citizens of Washington County, we need to give them the right to vote for it. The state constitution says that we must have a jail. And we have to operate it within the boundaries that the state tells us to operate it. So, you know, we're already, we had over 50 on mats tonight and today. We cannot continue to do that and not have lawsuits. So, you know, I hope that the people on this committee will reconsider their actions for the best for all citizens in Washington County. I think we need to proceed with this. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Does the public get a chance at this moment?
Are you ready for the question?
You're not required to take public comments.
Okay, the question is on the adoption to postpone item 9 indefinitely. Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no.
No.
Show the hands, please. With the ayes, raise their hands. 1, 2. The noes? The noes have it. The motion fails.
I move that we send on to the Finance Committee, 9.1.
See that again, please.
I move that we pass 9.1 on to the Finance Committee. I think it needs to go to the Finance Committee. No. It doesn't? Okay. Then I'll just make a motion that we proceed with 9.1. Or pass, excuse me, I make a motion that we pass 9.1. Thank you.
Okay. We have a motion to take item 1.9.1 to the quorum court with a due pass recommendation. Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Okay. Now, is there public comment? Okay. Come to the microphone, state your name and address, and please hold your comments to 3 minutes.
Okay, that won't be a problem. My name is Elizabeth Koger. I live at 3661 East Embry Drive in Fayetteville. And I've sent an email out with some to everyone earlier tonight. I don't know if you received it. And excuse me, I'm kind of nervous here. And I heard what Justice Harbison said about giving people the right to vote, and I agree with that. But this governing body owes it, before you send it on, you need, like Justice Deakins said, you owe it, you have a due diligence responsibility and best practices that you consider other alternatives. And there are other alternatives. I outlined those in my letter. Let me see. I listed 13 and possible things that we need to look at. And I would also point out that we're not the only ones. If we do this, we wouldn't be the first county to do this, because in Fort Smith, Sebastian County has already commissioned a study, which the quorum court authorized last month. And they've got a committee that they're going to hire experts to come in and audit the sheriff's office, not only just the how money is spent, how money comes in, but also the practices of the sheriff's office and what could be done to maybe make it more efficient. And I don't know why we can't do that. Why can't we just step back and consider, talk to some experts, some people who do this kind of thing and can maybe give us more insight? Because I think we shouldn't just rush to do this. I think we need more information. I think it's very important. And as I said, in some of the alternatives I had was, people who are in on misdemeanors and low-level nonviolent offenses, we need, other options to handle that. Do they really have to be in jail? There's all and things like that. But I'll let you read that, and I'll hand it out to anybody who wants that. I don't want to take up a lot of time, but I think it's wrong to just pass it on without considering other alternatives.
Thank you for your comments. Is there a speaker in favor of the motion?
That's it? That's all the comment we get?
No.
There is in Robert, which you've adopted. You've adopted Robert. I did it.
Go ahead, Sheriff.
So, I am the sheriff, but I'm also a citizen of Washington County and have been since 1971. So, I'm also a taxpayer and have quite an extensive understanding of law enforcement and operation of a jail. I'm in my 40th year in law enforcement, about 35 of which have been in supervision and leadership. Obviously, we've been talking about this, not with everybody on the court, but it's been talked about publicly and with the setting court for about the last 4 years about the upcoming crisis that we're now in the middle of. You're going to hear from a group of people that they want to see other things explored and done. We've explored. I've sat on 2 different commissions, actually 3, but 2 different commissions with a Democratic governor and a Republican governor to study prison reform, overcrowding, and all things in between. We have made recommendations at the state level and tried to implement programs to reduce county overcrowding along with prison overcrowding. Those things take money, they take oversight, they take input from a lot of different people. So it's not that I come into this blind and just think that we need a bigger jail. In fact, as a leader of the sheriff's office, my world would probably be better in a lot of ways if we didn't expand, but that's the irresponsible thing to do. We've got to look to the future. We've got to understand that we're already releasing over 200 people a month that need to be in jail or would otherwise be in jail. It's going to get worse. You're going to hear things about the 287G program here in just a little bit, and I'll respond to that if it does come up. But I'm just anticipating that it's going to come up, and I will argue that side of it in just a moment if you'll allow me the time. But folks, I'm telling you, we've done the studies. We have been talking about this for 4 years. This is not something that's new. The public has had opportunity after opportunity to discuss this issue, and I'm telling you, the experts will argue on my behalf that this is what we've got to do. Tough decision on your part is putting it on the ballot. It's not you saying that you want to pass a tax. You're passing that on to the public and let them decide, and then the monkey's off your back, so to speak. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sheriff. Is there a speaker against the motion?
Hello, and thank you. My name is Laura Villegas, and I'm a resident of Washington County in Springdale. And I haven't seen those reports. You know, I thought this committee was established to study and ponder it and investigate and all that. I haven't seen any evidence of that tonight. I would like to see it because I do think that there are other options that should be very, very seriously considered. I haven't seen any proof of that. One particular item, and he mentioned it because he knows me, I suppose, is the 287G. Some of our beds are taken up with immigrants who are detained because of minor traffic violations and things like this, and our own ICE holds at times. I didn't see any of those figures in the figures that were up on the board. You know, how many were detained for that reason, for example. It wasn't very specific. It would be nice to see those specific figures to know who exactly has been arrested on 287G, on what charge, and whether they're on ICE holds or not. Because when you look it up online, it only says hold. It doesn't say what kind of hold. There are a lot of people, and there's a growing community in Washington County that are against our participation in 287G, which helps to fill beds. And perhaps we could empty some of those beds if we didn't put people who were nonviolent in there and hold them. At the last steering committee meeting for 287G, which they're required to have once a year, we presented petitions, total number 4,354 total signatures of mainly people from Washington County who are opposed to this, okay? And at that meeting, we presented copies of these petitions to the sheriff of Benton County and to a representative for Sheriff Helder, because he did not attend, but his deputy who was there got one. In any case, I would just like to propose that it's fine to put it out to a vote, but if people don't know what they're voting for, when have we had town halls to discuss this? When have we had anything like that where the public could go to be informed and could be presented with some of these reports that Sheriff Helder mentioned, for example? I haven't seen any of them, but I don't think the public is informed. What good is it to put it out there to vote if they don't know really what they're voting for or against? And that's my comment. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
I appreciate that you do have
and-
this committee. I appreciate that the committee was formed to look into and study these matters before they just automatically vote for or against in the regular quorum court. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Patty, can we get an address and make sure we get the right reports to this lady? Okay, is there a comment in favor of the motion?
No, but I don't think your ordinance actually requires alternating viewpoints.
Sir, you're going to have to come to the microphone.
Okay. All right. Hi, I'm Clint Schneckloth. I'm pastor at Good Shepherd Lutheran Church here in Fayetteville, Arkansas, and lived in the county for the last 8 years. I find myself interestingly and surprisingly aligned with Patrick Deakins on this issue, although we probably have maybe very different reasons for coming to that position. I am interested in us not forwarding this tax to the consideration of our county because of really precisely what Mr. Deakins said, that we have not considered many other excellent considerations that would not overcrowd our jail. I can tell you a couple of examples of personal experiences I have. There was a gentleman last year who robbed our church and spent the last 3.5 months in the county jail. And he just had his trial yesterday or the day before. So he's been held in the county jail pre-trial that entire time. And so there's definitely got to be some ways to not overcrowd the jail with all these people that we're holding pre-trial. That's one example. Another really big one that the county hasn't done, and this is all on you and the judge in particular, is we don't have the critical care ward open that was promised last year. And so you've got that's a potential of 18 beds that could be housed elsewhere that are currently being housed at the county jail. So that's another example of where we have overcrowding that we wouldn't need to have. But the bigger picture kind of moral issue that really needs to be addressed here is we hold more people in jails in the United States pre-trial than the rest of the world holds in jail, period. So we are considering taking action right now in our county that will replicate what is indeed happening all across the country of incarcerating hundreds of thousands of people when there are many good alternatives to incarceration. I love taxes, and I like to pay more of them if I think they do good work. So that's where Deakins and I probably disagree. But I don't think that I want to spend extra tax dollars and my own sales tax dollars on an expansion to the jail. I would much rather see us direct such funds to things like larger mental health care services attached to the hospital, larger critical care units, any number of other options, because the majority of the people that are in our jail, a large percentage of them, need other kinds of care than what our jail provides. All our jail does is hold people. That's all it does. So I would like those of you that are currently considering sending this forward to the larger quorum court to reconsider that decision. I would love for you to consider it especially in a humanitarian and a moral frame. Do you really want twice as many people being held in our county's jail as currently? Because if we build it, we will want to fill it. We will. We'll fill it. And do you want that on your shoulders? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, sir. Are there other public comments? Get one bite at the apple.
Thank you for taking my comments. My name is Gladys Tiffany. I'm a resident of Washington County at 105 North Willow in Fayetteville. And the comment I'd like to make is that another issue that we have not talked about is an issue that is now has been decided by the Supreme Court of the United States that talks about the place of money bail and what happens in the way people are placed in our prisons and our jails. And Washington County is also participant in this process of keeping people in our jail because they do not have enough money to pay a bail to get out. And this is happening all over the country, and it's something that I think is a major issue for people who are trying to understand how to reduce populations in the jail. This is a fairness issue that really is addressed by looking at how we use money bail and what other alternatives there are, because there are a number of alternatives that are possible that people can be used, because the two parts of bail, the purpose of bail is to make sure people show up for their hearings, and that they're not a danger to the community. And there are a number of other ways that those are addressed that are not things that end up incarcerating people pre-trial in ways that are not really constitutional, in fact. And so I'd like to suggest that as one of the ways that Washington County needs to consider when we're talking about the jail population that we're trying to lower, and that we can do this in a way that really is much better for people. And also want to mention the idea that 287G, that issue is one that people are looking at in many different ways across the country right now. And in fact, there are a couple of counties that, actually more than a couple of counties, who have looked at 287G and decided that they needed to back away from those agreements. And I have copies here of a packet that, it includes the questions that People Power of Washington County put to the quorum court yesterday. But it also has some articles on a couple of those counties that I think the court will find really interesting. And I'd like to share that with the jail committee, but I'm not sure who you are. Is that the 7 of you? Okay.
Thank you for your comments. Are there other public comments? Ma'am, I just want to make sure that, is there anybody else that wants to make a public comment before we go twice?
My name's Butch Pond. I live in Washington County, and I live out in the county. And I'm speaking to all of you sitting around that horseshoe. Some of you hadn't been there very long. But after you have, and if you have constituents in some rural part of the county, you'll be getting calls from some people who are frightened about some individual that they're concerned about in their neighborhood, and they'll be thinking that y'all have some kind of pull or swing because you're a justice of the peace. And they'll say, can't you do something about this individual? He's frightening my wife, my children, and I need him put in that jail. It will happen. If you live in town, you don't have to worry about it because, it's city police. They come and take those people, and they take them down there to the county jail, so it's once removed. But I've sat in on a lot of these committees, and all kinds of ideas come up. And I'm telling you now that we've waited too long for this jail expansion. There's not any quick fixes. You're gonna have to do something, and you needed to already have had it done. If there's a better idea, it needs to come forward now. You don't have time. Take the sheriff's word for it, not just the sheriff. You talk to the police chiefs in the surrounding area of northwest Arkansas. You talk to the city mayors. They're counting on, first of all, this jail committee, and then this quorum court to step up to the plate and do something for the people of your county. And it's not just your county. There's neighboring counties involved. I could not suggest to you some of the things that have been suggested to me. We can't just turn our back on the neighboring counties.
Mr. Pond, your 3 minutes are up. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you for your time.
My name is Eva Madison. I live in District 9. And I wanted to say that I felt like when this issue came back to this committee, that it came back for the purpose of study. And I'm concerned that the choice that the committee has framed tonight is either to immediately pass it on without much study or to postpone it indefinitely. I think that when the court sends an issue back to committee, it is for study. And we're hearing a lot from the audience, as well as what we heard from JP Deakins, that we would like to consider alternatives. I'm reluctant to just do away with this as the option without having discussed the options. And I would ask this committee to slow things down and do this the right way. That's why we sent something back to committee. Study it. Talk about the studies that the sheriff has talked about. Talk about the issues that our citizens have raised, and then decide whether to pass this on to the full quorum court or not. For us to just have referred it to committee to kill it or to immediately pass it back, I don't know why we sent it to committee. Doesn't make sense. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
I don't think that the committee had any intention of not studying it and not coming up with other solutions. As long as since I was elected, everybody that's contacted me has said, slow down and let's find some solutions. Postponing it indefinitely gives us the opportunity to bring back whatever ordinance the court decides is appropriate after the study. It doesn't kill it.
I would just like to say that I agree with Justice Madison. I was under the impression that it was sent to committee for us to find a viable solution. However, postponing something indefinitely is not a solution. I mean, I've been on the court for a month, but if you've been talking about this for 4 years, within 4 years, we can figure something out. So just postponing indefinitely, well, what is indefinitely? So if we get to the next quorum court meeting and we can't figure out something, and then the next committee meeting we can't figure out something, we're gonna look up and it's gonna be another 4 years, and you'll have all new, well, maybe not all new people, hopefully not, but it could be a different group of justices, and then we're just going to keep starting from the same point. We were elected because our constituents believe that we have the ability to figure this out. And I agree 100%. Yes, we don't need to just pass it on. However, postponing indefinitely is definitely not the way to go. So I would hope that as a committee that we could figure something out.
I agree with both of you guys. There's an education component going here. It's not just for the quorum court, but for our community. And the reason I wanted to go out to vote is that we not have to educate ourselves, but the public of what's going on. And I don't think either sides are educated on this subject to make a decision. And so what is the solution? We all have to be educated in this county regarding jails, what happens, mental health. I mean, it just has to be a larger conversation. And what is that solution?
Justice Harbison.
I've been working on alternative sentencing for the last year, trying to come up with alternatives. And I think everyone that came to the microphone, you are on track. Yes, we need to address mental health. Yes, we need to address poverty. Yes, all of these things that are causing our people to be in jail. But if you've been down to the jail, like I think everybody around this horseshoe, and you see the people, I mean, I've even sat in the 8.1 hearings. I know the people that are coming through there. I know their conditions. They're not middle class because they don't have the money for bail. The reason I am going on and sort of pushing to help the sheriff to get this out to the people, then we can have the town meetings and the discussions of what if it's going, if the sales tax is going to pass. But I think we're in a crisis mode, and no, I don't want to fill it up. because I am working on other things, and some of those things you have mentioned. And I think we all need to work together. But I think that this needs to be sent to the quorum court and let the quorum court do the further discussion so that everybody can come up with ideas of how we need to proceed with this. And this is all that we're doing tonight, is passing this on to the quorum court. Thank you.
Justice Deakins.
I can understand the arguments that my colleague J.P. Harbison makes, but my fear is that when we pass this on and we make this argument of we're just passing it on for the people to vote on, we're putting all of our eggs in one basket, essentially. What shape are we going to be in if this does not pass off of a ballot? And so that's why I want us, once again, to be deliberative in this process and come up with a solution that I think could work for everyone. I don't think we're there yet. I think there's a lot more work to do, and I think there's a lot more learning to do. So there's it. That's it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I think that the sheriff probably thought that I was public enemy number one for a long period of time down here, because I hate to think about increased sales taxes. I read in the paper this week that we have one of the lowest property taxes in the nation, but we got one of the highest sales taxes. Northwest Arkansas, one of the highest sales tax levels in the states. You know, I think about the East Coast and West Coast, all these crazies out there that keep bumping taxes. But you know, that's where we are, and it seems like we're going that direction even faster. But the point I'm trying to make is that I have been hassling this situation. I've been on the court for 6 years. I've been hearing about it for 6 years. And I have fought it every way I know to fight it. But I'll tell you that I've talked to the local people, the local enforcement people. I've been to the sheriff's meeting. I've talked to the sheriffs in some of the town, in Springdale in particular. Even got a call from Tawnytown, and the mayor said, Harvey, we sent a woman down there that'd been a real problem. We sent her for 30 days. Sent her down there, they booked her and sent her home. What kind of message are we putting out here in the county for minor offenses that are problematic, and they're gonna be right back? We've got to do something about the jail space. I despise thinking about passing another doggone sales tax. But I can tell you, I think I've dug into it enough. I'm convinced, and I know we've got a lot of new people on the court. We've got a lot of different opinions. But we have got to do something to provide some space for people out here that are offenders, and we're going to continue to see that go up as population goes up. We're at the point we've got to do something. And I'd be glad to have an open forum and talk at some length and allow the sheriff to bring back a lot of people to share ideas and information, whatever it takes to get everybody on the same page. But I think we're at a place we got to do something.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Do any of the committee members have any more comments? Okay. Go ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate your take on things, Mr. Bowerman, for sure. I think that we, as a full quorum court, are on a learning curve here. I know that some of you that have been sitting on the court are eager to move this along or figure out a solution, but please take into consideration that there are new members on the court that haven't been here those 4 years and don't feel that frustration and are fresh and ready to study and figure out solutions to this issue. We owe it to our constituents who voted for us, and as was stated earlier, when we sent this to committee, it shouldn't just be bounced back out. I really don't feel that that is appropriate. I feel like committee is there for the study of what's going on, and there is so much more to this than just signing the sheet of paper and moving it on to full quorum court. So as a new member, I appreciate it. I appreciate public comment. Thank you very much for coming out and being here tonight.
Do any of the committee members have any more questions? Are you ready for the question? The question is on the adoption to take item 9, the said ordinance.
Public comment kind of got, it went back to the, we were being polite because it came back to you guys.
Ma'am, you're going to have to come to the microphone if you want to talk.
Comment time is over, unless the committee votes to extend public comment.
I apologize. Can you hear me?
Hang on 1 minute.
I think public comment, there was some folks that came from the board, and so we were trying to
Ma'am, the
refrain.
public comment period is over.
I was. Now, I can't help that a gentleman jumped up from the board and it kind of started a talk amongst the board, and it took away from public comment. Public comment wasn't over. We were being respectful.
Give us your
I'm
comments.
sorry I'm new to this,
You
and
have-
I'm sorry I have a learning
So
curve.
am I. You have 3 minutes.
So I apologize that I'm just getting in on this conversation. My name is Sarah Moore. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I've lived in Fayetteville since the late 90s. I love this area. I mean, this is home. We'll be here probably forever. But I'm very concerned. First, I want to share this with all of you. We've kind of touched on this a little bit, but we should have had a crisis intervention unit that was supposed to be up and running in October of last year. Anybody, if you can't see this title, I'm sorry, it's kind of small. It's called Crazy, A Father's Search Through America's Mental Health Madness. Man, let me tell you, if you have not walked the walk with someone who has gone through a mental illness situation, or they battle that every day, it's like a cancer or diabetes. 1 in 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, you have mental illness. 1, 2, 3, 4, you have mental illness. 1, 2, 3, 4, you have mental illness. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay?
Don't tell my wife.
Sorry, just for example, and obviously I don't know your personal situations, and I'll leave that private. But the truth is that 1 in 4 folks that are sitting in the jail, and probably more than that, are battling mental illness. A crisis intervention center would be a real big way to divert some of those beds. And a lot of these people have come up with a lot of very creative and interesting ways. One of the things, I was in corporate America for a long time before I stayed at home, and one of the things, and I appreciate that, Mr. Deakins, JP Deakins, I'm not sure how we address you, sorry, but I'm very respectful of the fact that what we do is we always look at best practices. What's been going on in other places? The one thing about Northwest Arkansas that is so neat is that we are a jewel within Arkansas. We set the standard. We're progressive. We're the ones that come up with the ideas of what we're going to do. That's going to set the tone for the state, but we're actually behind. There are 5 stabilization centers that were approved in the state of Arkansas. Do you know where we're at in that list? Were we first to open? Does anyone know? No, we're going to be number 5.
No, you're wrong.
Are you sure?
I'm 100% sure. There are 4 that were given, there are 2 that have opened, 2 that
Okay.
have not, Washington County being one of them.
Are we gonna-
Jonesboro, Craighead County being the other one who's not anywhere even near
Okay,
as
I've
close
looked
as
at a
we
news
are.
story, so I apologize that that was incorrect. But from what I understand, at this point, do we have an open date? I haven't seen an open date, a
Not a
new
firm
one.
open date.
A revised, yeah, I haven't either. But again, the solutions, when you look at best practices, this book is kind of interesting because he basically does that. He goes and actually investigates and tries to see best practices, because a lot of mentally ill end up in prisons. And my question would be to you is to go look at those best practices. Where are diversion places that can go for misdemeanors or alcohol treatments or the mentally ill? How can we potentially
Ma'am.
pull the head count down? I'm out of time.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
Your time's expired. Justice Ecke.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for indulging this non-committee member to make a comment. I would like to address the gallery. One thing I do know, that I know, is that our Sheriff Helder, and his staff operate best practices. And that reputation goes from East Coast to West Coast, setting the standard of innovation, integrity, solutions. That is the way Washington County runs their jail. And you ought to be proud of the way they run the jail, with ethics, with high standards, and best practice. We have discussed this a lot. If this committee would like to bring Sheriff Helder back, along with all the studies and research that has already been done and already paid for, I don't want to spend more money on research that has already been done. Now, if further questions need to be addressed and that research needs to be done, fine, but I don't want to overlap what we have already done because there's been a tremendous amount of work that has been done. But I think because this is a new court, you all aren't aware of what's been happening for the last 4 years. So I would make a recommendation that Sheriff Helder come forward and do so many presentations for this court regarding the sales tax and why that amount and what we're doing. That would just bridge the communication gap. Thank you for your time and your indulgence, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your comments.
I have one, I'd like to speak again, please. I won't be very long. Okay. Okay, one of the justices, or Mr. Pons, I think it was, suggested that if anybody has any better ideas, now is the time to bring them forward. I have some better ideas, and I'd like to bring them forward. I have them printed right here. And Justice Harbison said there's a crisis at the jail. That crisis didn't happen overnight. We need to take time and see how that crisis happened and what we can do to fix it other than just rushing to build a larger jail. And Sheriff Helder, I respect Sheriff Helder and his experience, but because of that, I think he has tunnel vision when it comes to the jail. He sees a problem.
Ma'am, if you don't speak in the microphone,
Sheriff Helder, okay, I respect Sheriff Helder.
The rest of us won't hear you.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. I respect Sheriff Helder. I respect his experience. But because of that, I think he has tunnel vision. He sees a problem. The jail is overcrowded. Build a bigger jail. There's other alternatives. And if you, with your permission, I'd like to pass these out to each person.
pass them out quickly.
And that's all. Thank you very much.
Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I like all their ideas. They talk a lot, and you say a lot, but I haven't heard one of them say how they're gonna pay for anything. They say this. Tax dollars pays for all of this stuff. You know, I just don't understand where they're coming from. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments by committee members? Are you ready for the question?
Is there any update on the stabilization unit?
I didn't hear.
Update on the crisis stabilization unit.
Well, it's not germane to the conversation we're having right now.
Well, the question is that budget coming from the jail expansion, or is it a separate budget?
I have no idea. I can't answer that question.
Okay, separate. Okay, thank you.
One more time. Is the committee ready for the question? The question is on the adoption of a motion to take the ordinance described by item number 9 to the quorum court with a due pass recommendation. All in favor say aye. Aye. Pose same sign. Or opposed, no?
No.
No.
Would the ayes raise their hand? If you're going to vote aye, raise it. 1, 2. Shawndra? Okay, the noes, raise their hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. The motion fails. Yes, ma'am.
Is there a better structure to have a forum, other than this structure that could include every member of the quorum court to make a decision on this?
Well, yeah, you go to the full court.
That's what she tried to do earlier, to send it back. Why can't we just table
Mike.
it? Why can't we just table it?
It's only appropriate to table a motion if we're going to take it off the table at the same meeting.
No, you can table it. To table it, yes, you're right.
Justice
I give you the
Harbison.
I would like for us to, maybe the quorum court, and this will be up to Sheriff Helder, that we do a retreat or a meeting one day and try to get everybody up to speed.
Would that include the public?
What are we going to add? Item 2.
We haven't done anything. We gotta do something about it.
Okay, we have to do something with item number 9. Would one of the committee members like to make a motion?
But you voted, didn't you? Did you vote on it?
You can put select to the set time. April, May, meeting. You can make
I think we
Justice
need an
Deakins.
educational something.
Mr. Chairman, can I make a motion that we postpone this to the May Jails and Law Enforcement Committee meeting? Hopefully that would give us enough time to schedule this. I don't know the exact date of that meeting. So.
What, Chairman?
We have a motion to postpone it to the May meeting. Is there a second? Motion dies for lack of a second.
When is the latest that we can get something on an election? A ballot? Does anyone know? Sheriff Elders, do you know?
No, you just, it has to be at least 60 days out.
60 days out.
Once it's passed by the quorum court, you have to have the election within 60 days.
So with May, Patrick? Back it up a month, let's go there. Let's go ahead.
Justice Harbison.
I would like for us to have a meeting to try to get everybody up to speed of what's going on. Go through the jail, let, Sheriff Helder explain, yes, this would be open to the public, but I'm not sure, we are the ones that are got to make the decision, and if you have positive input right now, I just feel we need to move on the jail. Yes, I want all these other alternatives as possibilities, but we can add these after we make this decision. No, I don't want us to build a pod and then fill it up within 6 months. And that's what's going to happen unless we come up with some other alternatives to sentencing. And I'm willing to work on that. But I think at this point, someone said town meetings. If we put this on the ballot, then we need to have the town meetings and people can explore and ask their questions. If we don't do that, then, it's just nil. Thank you.
Justice Duncan.
I move to postpone item 9 to the April Jail and Law Enforcement Committee meeting. That'll allow time to explore other options.
We have a motion to postpone it till a time certain, which is the April meeting. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? No discussion on a motion to postpone it. Okay.
Washington.
Thank you. I would just like to reiterate what has already been said. And it just seems like we just keep pushing it back and back and back. At the end of the day, it is inhumane to have people sleeping on mats even if they are in jail. So it is our responsibility as members of the quorum court to get up to speed. And I realize the majority of us are new. I realize that there is information that's out there, but if that information has been presented, I would hope that an opportunity would be provided for us to get up to speed and to get up to speed very quickly. We don't have to keep pushing this out month after month after month. We need to make it a priority that before our next meeting, that we are up to speed. It just doesn't make any sense to move this out to April, May, and then that's going to become June, July, and then it'll become another year. We need an opportunity to come up to speed. I would appreciate that opportunity because obviously there's a lot of information that I'm not privy to, and it would stand to reason that a lot of the newer people on the court are not privy to. However, if those studies have been done and our sheriff is telling us that those studies have been done, there still is no need to recreate the wheel. So I would just like to ask for an opportunity for the entire court to meet with Sheriff Helder so that any research that has already been done, that has already been presented to other members of the court, that it could be presented to us new justices.
We have a motion on the floor to postpone it till the April meeting. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Would the ayes raise their hand? Willie, you either have to raise it or not raise it. Okay, the noes raise their hand. Motion fails. Justice Harbison.
Back to my original statement. We need a work.
Okay, I
Period.
understand that. We need to deal with the motion on the table. I know what we need to do. We got to do something with this
Then
motion.
let's just leave it like it is.
See,
I mean, it failed.
It's on your agenda, you gotta do something with it.
What now?
He said it's on the agenda, we gotta do something with it, but it's 4-3.
Well, it's 4-3, it failed.
what are our options?
All right, I'll make a motion that we table it until we have a workshop.
A motion to table, if we're not going to take it off the table at the same meeting, is out of order. We can postpone it till a time certain if we can agree on when that is.
I will make a motion that we postpone it to the March meeting.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. There's no discussion on the motion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Pose same sign. Or pose no, excuse me.
No.
One no. Motion passes. Let's go to item 10. Item 10 is an ordinance calling for a special election in Washington County, Arkansas on the question of levying a countywide 1/4% sales and use tax and prescribing other matters pertaining thereto. Do I have a motion?
I'm going to make a motion that 10 and 11 be put with 9 and be postponed till March.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no.
No.
Motion carries. Wow. Item 12, other business. Is there any other business to discuss? Justice Washington.
Yes, I would just like to ask a question that was already asked by JP Yanez, but at the time it was not germane to the motion. Could we please get an update on the CSU? 100% of the emails that I have received have been about that, and I can't explain it to them. So I would like an explanation so that I can be able to explain to them why the CSU is not up and running. So I can have accurate information and they don't have to rely on whatever is being presented in the media.
We'll
I think
get
we
that.
owe it to them. We'll get it, I'm sorry?
We will get it.
Okay, well, when? Because they're asking, I just want to know.
Ma'am, I'm not the county judge. I will request it. Yeah, I'm just told what the next quorum court meeting will have an update.
Chair, can we ask Mr. Gills, does he know anything about it?
Your one quorum court member right here knows a ton about it, because she talked about it right here for like 5 minutes while we were listening to you.
Who?
No, what's her name? Lisa.
Oh.
Lisa knows all about it, so apparently there's a lot of information available.
Right now?
Okay, I'll provide an update on the CSU. Just the history of the CSU, as a lot of you are aware when we were awarded one of the 4 CSUs, the initial thing is where we were going to put it. Our first place to look was underneath the Welcome Health, the first floor over by the UAMS under Welcome Health. That was going to cost us about $1.5 million to renovate. Since that time, the county has looked at several other places, other options, including the old psych ward at the old Washington Regional, which is where UAMS is. That wasn't doable because UAMS is needing that to expand. The only other option that it appeared that the county had at the time was the first floor of the courthouse annex, and so that's what the county started in on and was moving towards. A renovation of that area was looking at a cost of about $650,000 to $750,000. The county has been working to procure private funding as to not burden the taxpayers of Washington County with this, which is why the quorum court has not been asked to appropriate any money. As all of you are aware, in the previous years, we've had pretty much budget crunches anyways, budget crisis, and so that was the goal of Judge Wood. Judge Wood happened to be visiting a department head, he and Chief Gales, in our old JDC. And the realization came to them that that would be a great place to look for the CSU. The reason for that is there's not a lot of construction that is needed. With the first floor of the courthouse annex, you pretty much have a blank slate that you've got to start all over. You've got to run water, electricity, you've got to tear concrete up. There's a lot of different things. There are certain standards that these CSUs have to meet, and they're kind of the same standards as that are met with behavioral health hospitals, mental health hospitals. You've got certain fixtures, you've got certain locks, you've got certain door handles. Our old JDC, which is behind the old Washington County Jail, is already equipped with a lot of the things that's needed for a CSU. It has been retrofitted since the JDC moved out so that it doesn't look like a jail any longer. It looks like office buildings and office space. With that, in looking at that location, it appears in our estimate that we've gotten on renovating and outfitting the JDC at a cost of about $250,000. So it's quite a bit less. We have still not heard back on our private funding. Judge Wood would agree, we've got to get something done. We need to get something done on the CSU, but at the same time, the county judge has a responsibility to be a good steward of county funds, of taxpayer funds. And so that looks, as of right now, the most economical and the best option that we have. There's a lot of pros to it that the first floor of the courthouse annex did not have. And so that is currently what the county is looking at. Given that the renovations or any outfitting is minimal, we're not looking at a really big turnaround time on getting something done and up and running. There was a comment made about the 4 CSUs, and I'll say this: there are four given. Sebastian County was the first, and they were up and running. Sebastian County's been working on this CSU project for about 12 years. The only other one up and running right now is Pulaski County. Pulaski County is in their old JDC. As I understand it right now, while theirs is up and running, they are not taking any clients from law enforcement. The reason for that is they don't have the CIT training that is required to get people in there from law enforcement. So their crisis stabilization unit right now is not diverting anybody from their county jail. It is only taking people in need from other mental health hospitals or the local hospitals and getting those people in to fill those bed spots and get them treatment. It's not working as a diversion program. In my opinion, they're really not up and running yet as a crisis stabilization unit because they're not helping law enforcement. They're not getting people out of jails, which is the whole purpose of this. Fortunately for Washington County, we were the only county that had a local law enforcement officer that was trained to provide training for it's called CIT, Crisis Intervention Training. The Alita School, which is the Arkansas Law Enforcement Training Academy in Springdale, has been providing training after training after training. You can only do so many people at a time. I know for instance, Wednesday of this week, Judge Wood and I will be speaking to the CIT training. It's a group of another 15 to 20 officers, and that's about the max that they can do. When Washington County, gets up and running, unlike any other county that has a CSU, we will immediately begin taking our individuals from law enforcement. We will not need to get anybody from local hospitals or anywhere else, which is what Sebastian County had to do for a little while and what Pulaski is doing. I believe that once we are up and running, we will be operating as a crisis stabilization unit more so than Pulaski, even though they've been open for a little bit longer. And so that's where it is. The issue with this, what took so long with this, the governor and the legislature approved of a crisis stabilization unit. And they said, yes, this is great. Here's what we're going to do. Go forward. They had no infrastructure, no roadmap, nothing in place. We as the counties were working on figuring out what this vehicle looks like because we had nothing to go on. All we were told is, no, you can't do that. Not here's what you can do, but it was, no, you can't do that, rules won't allow it. And so there's been a whole lot of work go into figuring out what this looks like. With that said, I think we are really close. I think that Judge Wood's opinion of it was at, a last case or last ditch effort. Last resort for him would be to come to the quorum court and request some sort of funding. And he was really trying to avoid that. And I don't know that that will be. In order for us to get up and running, that may be something that has to happen sooner rather than later. And so that's where we are right now.
I just have one follow-up question. You said that there is no big turnaround time. When do you estimate? That's the question that people are asking.
So here's a couple of things. One, we are waiting on a visit from DBHS, Arkansas DBHS, the Department of Behavioral Health Services. They've got to come up before we do anything and bless what we've got. I have no doubt they're going to bless it because we had a blank slate over here. We've actually got something that looks like a unit here. I have no doubt, but we still have to wait for that. And I think they're looking to come up in the next 2 weeks. Once we get the okay from them, once we can move forward with construction, I think we're looking at about a 2-month turnaround time max to get that thing, to get it to where we can start accepting CIT clients. And the chief can have a better idea on that.
Okay, we constructed.
You have to come to the mic.
Before we say we constructed and we open, there's a period when we're completed with construction, when our operator, OGC, comes in, they get fully staffed, then the state will come back and completely review the finished product with all the beds and all the furnishings and the staff. And the staff has to go through accreditation. There has to be doctors, there has to be LPNs, et cetera. So realistically, in my mind, you got the construction period here and you gave us a very tight window when you opened 2 months to Tom over here. But we would say probably 2 months after that for OGC to get their accreditation and actually be able to take their first client. Okay? So let's say 4 months. And that's a tight schedule. It took us a month to get them to come up, and it's the last part of this month.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leming.
Brian, it'd be safe to say that the state don't get in no hurry to do anything. Is that correct?
Typically, they do not. They have assured us, for what it's worth, that they would move with this as fast as possible, yet here we are still waiting on them to come up. So You're exactly right. There's some of it that is out of Washington County's hands.
And the money, we probably hadn't seen a nickel of money from the state to do any of this, have we?
No, the money that was set by the governor basically goes for the operation side of it. None of it could be used for the construction side.
Right.
And that ends up being about 1.5 million a year to run it that the state will be funding. But the construction side of it is incumbent upon the county.
I just want the citizens to know that when you deal with the state, when they say a month, it might be 6 months. When they say you might get the money this year, it may be next year. It's just, you just need to understand that the money ain't just thrown at us and said, get after it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Is there anything else under other business? Justice Madison.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank J.P. Washington for asking for this update on the Crisis Stabilization Center, because I'd like to remind everybody that we really have a package of issues we need to be looking at as far as emergency services. For one thing, our emergency operations just moved across the street to the old Terminella building and are camped out in Judge Taylor's old courtroom. They're there without a generator for backup power, and their parking is very limited in the back. And you may remember, I think it was last fall, we had a hearing about our ancient radio system for the county that is in serious need of upgrades, or we may not be able to talk to each other during an emergency. So I think all of these emergency issues need to kind of be considered together. So it's not a case of picking and choosing, because if you don't have a radio, you can't have good law enforcement. So there's a package here we need to look at. Thank you.
As I said a month ago, we've got to eat this elephant one bite at a time. Is there any other business? Are there any other public comments?
Thank you, Mr. Lester, for clarifying and telling us more information about the unit. I just wanted to hear an update on how many beds the new location would have. The old location said it was going to have 16 beds, and I just wondered how many.
Mind if I respond, Mr. Chair? State law dictates that. State and federal law,
Okay.
16 beds is all that we can have. That's the maximum that we're allowed to have is 16, so it will have 16 beds as well.
Is that just based on like the qualification of what that care is? I guess I'm trying to understand. To level set, this is my perspective as far as in our area. We have very few like day programs, and when you want to see a counselor to try to continue to have a stable degree of mental health, you probably wait 2 weeks or more to go to see your counselor. If you're in an acute crisis, situation, that's too long. Your next bed is basically to end up most likely in an ER if you're going to self-harm. A lot of people will end up, tangled with law enforcement, so that's the situation. When you're in acute care here locally, our only option is Northwest Springdale. They have 2 floors today, and they both run full. And right now, they are building a 3rd floor, which I have no doubt will be full as well. So the reason I'm coming and why I feel like this is such a dire situation is because I do see it as a major crisis in our area. We don't have some of the things like I see like in Fort Smith and some of the other areas where we have more like day programs and therapies that they can get to. And I'm going to be working on addressing that too and talking to you guys. And that's something I want to put a bug in your ear as well, is as we talk about these alternatives to these folks ending up like in jail or other places where we end up paying for them, is, I don't know if the county could ever get into funding like a day program. What are some of these other options that would keep and deter and help these to be productive citizens that actually, generate tax revenue, that are part of our vibrant economy, because ultimately they can do that when they stay on meds, when they have support, when they have places to go. They're our neighbors, they're our moms and our dads and kids. I mean, everyone is affected by that. So that's where I'm coming from with that, and the reason that I've posed some of those questions to you guys. So I know it's not an easy solve. I totally understand that, and I know dealing with the state, because I've done that as well. I know that it has its hurdles as well. We all do, and we all have our constraints. So I respect law enforcement. I respect the things that they have to do and the hurdles they have to jump through. So I don't want that to be misinterpreted from earlier as well. And I appreciate what you guys are doing. I think that the more that we can step up to and walk hand in hand with you guys and bring things to your awareness as well. Not everyone walks some of these paths. And so I think it's very helpful, hopefully, for you guys to hear firsthand some of these things that we're seeing and these struggles. And that's the reason the passion is around this crisis stabilization unit and why you're getting those emails and why we're continuing to ask, because you know, those close to us, when they don't really have a place to go, we ultimately don't want them in jail. Sure. That's not the place for them. They need treatment, not punitive. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
My name is Maya Porter, and I live in Johnson, and I'm very nervous. I would just like to commend Justice Harbison for her suggestions about a workshop or a retreat or something. I've been sitting here listening and realizing how adversarial this is, and it doesn't need to be. We're not enemies. We all want the same things, we just have a different way of going about it. I really would like to encourage you, there has to be some venue, some format that people, you as a court can get together and the public can get together and we can talk about solutions without fighting, without being opposed to each other. And if you want to make a public meeting, I would hope that there would be a way that you could have people who are representatives, like the people who have spoken here tonight, who could be prepared and could be part of that group and designated as part of that group, that could present their point of view, that we could all talk about it from a neutral point of view and come to a solution that everybody's happy with. I think it can be done. It just has to have the will to make it happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate the opportunity. I know the late hour. My name is Mireya Wright. I live at 1819 North Hunters Ridge, and I'm a native of Fayetteville, Arkansas. I also run 7 immigrant resource centers here in Arkansas, one of which is here in Washington County. And up until recently, I was chair of the State Board of Education. And the reason I bring this up is as I'm listening here, and again, to echo the last comment that was made, I just have to wonder if there's an opportunity, if your rules and regulations allow for a work session. I know that in my time on the State Board of Education, we had several controversial issues, and I think the main thing I'd like to see avoided, as many have expressed here, is that we come back in March and we find ourselves in the same situation again, and where many of us in the community who have different perspectives that we hope to bring to the table would only feel the need to come back again. And I know that the work session was just a very useful tool that I was able to implement when I was on the state board, where we as could be have an invitation for members of the public, or just to give Sherrod Helder a chance, as many have expressed here, an opportunity to express his reports, so that we could come and listen and come from a place of information, so that when we did come back at the March session, that we also did so as a public from an informed standpoint of perspective. So thank you for the leisure of this board and for your service. I know that there's no level of gratitude for the amount of times that you all are giving and time away from your families, and just appreciate this opportunity and forum, and wanted to lift up that idea in case it was something that was helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other?
I guess I need to close you out here. I think if you probably asked 100,000 people to describe me, it wouldn't be one with tunnel vision. When you talk about the CSU, that's part of the outcome of the commission that I served on for the governor. The reason that we were designated, we weren't originally designated as a recipient. It was because Judge Beaumont and I basically went to the governor and said, we've got to have this thing. And I think Judge Wood got on, but I don't remember where he was in this situation at the time. But we wouldn't even be in the discussion if it wasn't for this guy with tunnel vision. I had a study done, partnered with the university about 12 years ago, to study the inmate population in our jail. We were the first in the state to come up with an actual percentage of people that had mental health issues within our jail. I've been involved in this discussion for a long time. Tunnel vision, I don't think. Focused, very much so. I'm telling you that Springdale is going to close their jail in about 10 or 11 months. 8,000 arrests a year. That may not be a crisis to many here, but it is to the guys that have to book everybody in and have to have a place for them to stay. So we'll discuss that later. This is for the folks that are concerned about 287G, and I know that it seems like there's kind of weird alliances that are formed through discussions like this. You can have people that are over here and people that are over here, and all of a sudden they come together when it becomes taxes and human rights. So hopefully that will create some great debate. But what I'm prepared to do, and this has been much to the chagrin of immigration, I want to start releasing a monthly report on our 287G activities within the detention center. Now, it will be without names, obviously, to protect people, but it's going to give you an insight as to what we're doing, because there's so much misinformation out there about all the people that have a traffic violation that are deported. We did 43 checks, Lance, just for if you'll let me talk for just a minute about this, because this is something new for your commission, okay? This will be a report that's going to be released to your commission every month. In January, we did 43 checks of about the 1,200 people that came through our doors. Of the 43 that had possible immigration violations, 20 ended up with a detainer, okay? So less than half of the people that are 287G folks that are co-assigned within the detention center identified, only 20 out of 43 ended up with a detainer. Their countries of birth ranged from Cambodia to Ireland to El Salvador, Mexico, Jamaica, Marshall Islands, United Kingdom. It's not just Mexico of the folks that we're dealing with. And the people that had detainers issued: burglary, domestic violence, assault on family members, parole violation, hindering apprehension, felony, possession of a controlled substance with intent to deliver, felony terroristic threatening, domestic assault second degree. So as you can see, the majority of these are not minor traffic violations. In fact, the most minor traffic violation that's involved in these are DWIs, which are Class A misdemeanors, which one move either way or the officer hadn't stopped, it could be a fatality or serious injury. So please, take the time to study this when we start presenting, because there's so much misinformation that starts at the national level that has nothing to do with what we are doing responsibly here at Washington County. What we're doing is for a purpose, and it's for public safety. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Is there any other business to come before this committee? I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
I want to ask one question, Chairman. If the public right now don't know where all this information is, Tim, where can they find it? Sheriff? Where can they find all the information they want to know about the jail? Let the
on our website.
On the public
our
people.
studies that were done will be on the website. I think they're already there if people had checked, but we will. I'll double check and make sure. But then that'll be. It's two of the guys are sitting here that have presented.
That's
a
right.
third one that was contracted by the Quorum Court to do the bond counsel that basically helped put together this was here tonight, and I'll make sure they're here at the next meeting for people to ask questions and for them to present. They're the experts in that arena, okay?
But my question is, just be sure and let the public know where they can go and get all the information.
Washington County Sheriff's Office website.
Okay.
Man, it's a source of great information.
That's correct. Thank you. I make a motion, we adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Boom, boom.